Hey guys, what's up? It's Alec Torelli. Welcome back to an episode of the Hand of the Day. Quick update for you guys. If you guys have hands you'd like me to review on the channel, I will pick the best ones and review them right here, just like you see every single week. Simply click the link below, send your hands to me there. It'll all get to me and I personally review all of them. All right. Second, if you guys want weekly updates from me, life hacks, travel hacks, things that I'm doing, follow my updates around the world, as well as some poker tips that I only share with readers and subscribers, be sure to click the link below and subscribe to our newsletter sent out to you every Monday. It's truly awesome stuff, and I've got a lot of positive feedback from it. So click the link below. You could subscribe right away, and it's totally free. All right, guys, let's get right back to the Hand of the Day.
Hand of the Day.
Today's hand comes from one of my readers who's playing a tournament in very early levels. Blinds are 510, and we have a pretty deep stack here, almost 300 big blinds. So early level of the tournament plays a lot differently. Depending on your tournament, a lot of times people simply don't want to go all in no matter what. They play very, very tight, and they over-fold, meaning they fold too often because they simply just don't want to play any hands, or they're very, very conservative with the types of hands they're playing. So I think that's going to factor into some of the bet sizing strategy that we're going to get into in this video. It's important to have the context of the situation to better understand how people are going to be adjusting and playing their hands in real time. So we get an open here, under the gun +1 to 35, pretty standard, and the button now 3 bets to 160. And we find ourselves in the big blind with 2 kings. So my 4 betting range here would be pretty tight. There's not really that much of a reason to get out of line early in the tournament and go ahead and be 4 betting here. I mean, theoretically, we could be balanced with something like ace-5 suited, aces, kings, and ace-king. What I would actually do in real time is just so dependent on who the 2 openers are. I'm probably not going to be 4 betting with something like 10s here or jacks. I'm probably just going to flat call with that hand, maybe even fold that hand if my opponents are super tight. Probably just flat call with it, play a flop, and sort of see what happens. So my 4 betting range is probably going to be mostly for value. Now, my opponents probably aren't going to be, necessarily knowing what that is, and they might just play their hands face up. They might just play their own strength of their hand and not really be concerned with what my range is. But I think it's important here to kind of stop and take a step back and look at what types of hands we're going to be playing this way. So we 4 bet to 440, which I think is a pretty good sizing here. We're not going to want to go too small to guarantee our opponent's going to call. We want to be able to win the pot pre-flop as well, given our bet sizing. And so I think 440 is a good size in this spot. The original raiser folds, and the villain calls on the button. And we go heads up to the flop. The flop comes gin for us, ace, king, 8. We flop middle set with a backdoor flush draw. Incredible flop for us, especially because we're hoping our opponent has something like ace X suited, ace queen, ace king, ace jack, whatever. So great spot for us. Now, here's where I think we make our first mistake in the hand. The pot is 938 or 930 or something, and we bet out 500. Now, I think, it's profitable to bet in this spot no matter what. It's profitable to bet 500, but I think it's a mistake from a bet sizing standpoint. I think what we should be doing here is betting something like 350, closer to a third of the pot here, allowing our opponent to call with more hands and also allowing us to theoretically be betting more hands. The bigger our bet size here, the fewer hands we're going to be betting with. And because we don't have that many bluffs on this flop to begin with, I think choosing a smaller sizing makes more sense. It keeps our range a little bit wider. We're not going to have, a lot of our bluffs pre-flop, like ace X suited or ace king, ace queen, now connected with this board. And so if we were, so to speak, bluffing pre-flop, or we didn't have a pair, now we probably connected and made a pair on this board. So it's not that likely our opponent's going to necessarily just go off here. This board looks like it connected with our range, and our opponent isn't just going to put in money lightly. So I would make it a smaller bet size here, keep our range wider, allow our opponent to call, give him better odds to call on this board. And realistically, the other thing I didn't mention is the pot is so big already. It's already close to 1,000. Any bet size we choose here is going to allow us to get all the money in by the river anyway. So there's no reason to bet 500 and make the pot 2,000 on the turn. We could bet 300 and make the pot 1,600 on the turn and still get all the money in by the river. So there's really no reason to bet any bigger here that I see. and I would just go for a smaller sizing. As played, we bet 500. Our opponent now calls, and we go heads up to the turn. The turn comes as 7 of hearts, and we now check. I like this play here because we have one pot size bet left, and as I mentioned before, we can get all the money in on the river no matter what happens. It's important to note here that if we're beat, we're going to get stacked here. The pot is simply too big, our hand is simply too strong, we have too much equity, we can't fold. If our opponent has 9-10 of hearts and made a flush, we're losing the money regardless. So there's really no reason, it's important to sort of compartmentalize what you're thinking here. It's important to realize that we don't even worry about the times that we are behind, because no matter what, we're going broke. The pot is just too big, the way we played the hand, the way the board ran out, it's too hard to fold here. So if we check, our opponent goes all in, what are we gonna do? Check fold with middle set and like the nut flush draw? Like, it's never happening, right? So the question is, how do we get the money? What is the best way to play the hand? Well, if we were bluffing on the flop, now we probably connected with this turn. There simply aren't any bluffs that I could see that are reasonable for us to have here in this spot. Sure, we could have like 9-10 of spades, but that hand is going to check the turn. So we're never really going to be bluffing here when we go all in on the turn. It's just simply too loose of a play. It's not really necessary at this point in the tournament. And so I would check this turn. I think it makes our hand look weaker. Maybe our opponent is now going to bet when he shouldn't with something like ace X, and he's going to try and like protect his hand, or maybe he has 2 pair, he's going to bet the turn for us regardless. But even if he does check, no matter what the river card comes, we can value bet. If the river comes a heart, we can value bet. If the board pairs, we can value bet. If it comes a blank, we can value bet. Especially when our opponent checked behind on the turn, we can bet small and get value out of an ace and try to make it look like our hand is weaker than it is. So I really like this check on the turn. Our opponent checks behind, and we go to the river. The river comes a deuce, and now our hero in the hand decides to shove all in. Now here I think this is a little bit too aggressive of a play. I think the types of hands our opponent's going to call with are too few and far between. He's only going to call if he has something like 2 pair or a set, which is really, really unlikely. If he had those hands, he would have let us know earlier. He either would have raised the flop or bet the turn. So I think our opponent's range is very clear here. It's really likely he has something like ace X. And any ace is a bluff catcher at this point. If he has ace queen and we go all in, he's only beating a bluff here. We're never going to go all in with a worse hand for value. And at this point in the tournament, in the early stages, it's really likely that we're not going to be bluffing. It's not likely that we are bluffing here. Most people don't bluff here, so most people don't make big hero calls for their entire tournament life for 200 big blinds on the river with 1 pair in a 4-bet pot. It's just not that likely to happen. So I think going all in here is unnecessary. I just don't think we're ever going to get called. I think in a pot of like something like 2,000, I'd like to bet like 600. Go for like a third, a fourth of the pot bet, and our opponent's just going to be forced to call with what he very likely has, which is a top pair. You got to remember, like, there's no point in being greedy here. The pot is huge. Betting 600 is a massive amount of chips at this point in the tournament. So it's still a lot of big blinds that we're going to accumulate. And if we were in a cash game, some people ask about like how is this hand played differently in a cash game? In a cash game, maybe you can justify making a bigger bet because people can rebuy, people aren't so protective of their stack or their tournament life. But even in small stakes games, people sometimes don't like to go all in. They're just like, you know, they fear the whole all in bet, and their range for calling is very, very narrow. So they might fold that top pair regardless, even if we were in a cash game. So I think pretty much regardless of whether we're in a cash game or a tournament, certainly more so in a tournament, I'd like to see a smaller bet size here. As played, we went all in and our opponent ended up folding. So we missed out on a little bit of value in my opinion in this spot. But I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you guys think? How would you have played this hand? Do you like our bet size on the flop? Would you have bet the turn? What bet size would you choose on the river? Leave your thoughts in a comment below. Again, for more awesome content, subscribe to our newsletter. It's totally free. Awesome content coming your way every week to help your game reach that next level that you're looking for. Subscribe below, and that's it. Thank you for watching this video. You guys are awesome. More content coming your way every Tuesday. A new Hand of the Day episode at noon. We'll see you guys there. Thanks for watching.